Hey everyone, and welcome to Harlequin's Review Behind the Screen. I'm your host and Dungeon Master, Michael. And what we do is after we have our game on Fridays, I give it a few days, I post it to YouTube, and then I review as a Dungeon Master the things that I noticed for my players. I talk about things that they did, things they could have done, things that they should have done, and what they have done and how that's going to change the game for me going forward. So if you haven't watched the video, it is on video on demand for Twitch on my channel down below. It's also on YouTube. Just look for Harlequin's Requital and you will find our channel. We don't have a fancy name yet because we don't have as many followers because we're growing. But that's what this is also about, is just learning to grow. So, again, I'm your host and Dungeon Master, Cranio Dad, and let's kind of walk through. Last week, our players were off the boat. They are on their way to Baldur's Gate. We are in the beginning of Chapter 4 for Horde of the Dragon Queen, and they have a mission. They have actually a couple missions that take them to Baldur's Gate to track down the cargo that is being carried by the Cult of the Dragon further north. Nobody knows where, but they know that they have to go through Baldur's Gate to get there. So I had the boat leave the shore early, so that way I could give them a chance at an encounter to find a document that, well, on me, they should have had earlier, but they didn't. But that's how things roll. So, hey, Gidgewitch, how you doing? But, so I had them go ahead and they are in Mordor. It feels like it. They had an encounter and they handled that pretty well. I kind of like starting the night with a little bit of action, especially when I had a feeling about what was coming up. And I have long spoken about the fact that of the entire pretty much 2 books, this is the chapter that I like the least, because it's a lot of travel, a lot of chance encounters. There is some story plot development that's pretty meaty, but that's near the end of the chapter. And we also run into some issues since we're using leveling that's not based on experience level. Experience per kills is episodic. That the book has a bit of a section missing, but I'll talk about that in a minute. So they deal with the encounter pretty well. It was supposed to be Dragon Cult members who were part of the advance party that were heading towards Baldur's Gate. That the wagon broke, and the players just happened to come across them, and it took pretty high perception, and thankfully they had a party member who has a passive perception of 20, because fuck my life as a DM. But I enjoy it. I really do. So that was actually what I was kind of hoping would happen. There was a chance that they saw the tabard move out of the way, and they saw the Cult of the Dragon tabard being worn underneath, because just because they are trying to be in hiding doesn't mean they're smart. A fight ensued. There's a lot of chaos, a lot of awesomeness, and they dealt with it pretty well. It was a little bit of a long encounter, but it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on 5, and that has a tendency to draw out just a little bit. But needless to say, they were able to make it through that. They took the cart or the horses to Baldur's Gate. They ditched the horses at a very convenient horse trade spot, which happens to be just outside of Baldur's Gate, and made their way through the check-in process, presented the letter. Wasn't expecting they would present the letter, but presented the letter, and it went into a bag and disappeared. So we will see what comes of that. That might be interesting. Then they had two points of contacts on 2 different parts of the city. We're playing a campaign that's kind of playing a little loose with historical backgrounds for the players. I assume that the players, based on the fact of where they say their players are from, that they've had to have gone through Baldur's Gate, at least either in passing, be it a day, or be it spend a week in Baldur's Gate on your way through. Yes, at least one combat that you didn't initiate by being impatient. That is very true. So they had 2 contacts, and I kind of knew that I told them before we even started, my goal was to get them, if not through most of the way through Baldur's Gate, in that session. It's one of the situations where, as a DM, if you don't love the content, then do something about it. I didn't think to do something about it. Funny story about that once I get done with the wrap up. But so we moved through town pretty quickly. I was very direct in how I wanted them to go, and they asked the right questions for the most part, and they had the right checks and rolls. But one thing that everyone, with the exception of Quelbrudlum, thought about, and it happened a little too late because one of the events had already happened. Maybe there was two. We haven't gotten there yet. But is the fact that this is a heavily populated trade city where people are migrating through at a fairly rapid pace. It's the only way in all of the northern coast of Faerun to get from south to north, where you have Neverwinter and Waterdeep and places like that along the coast. So all trade goes through Baldur's Gate. It has established itself as a throughput for not just commerce, but for people as well. The other routes to get there take you way, way out east, over mountains and some not so nice areas. There's not a lot of passage across the river Cormier to get south. But he thought about the fact that there was going to be a problem, but we'll get there in a moment. They met with their contacts. The first contact was in the Garden District. Basically, it's a Druid and Wood Elf centric district. It's filled with taverns and grassland, or not grasslands, but patches of grass and trees and fairy lights. It's a really cool, relaxing place to go. And they dropped off some stuff. They picked up some stuff. They were given a contact down in the docks, which happened to be around the location that they were going to. Then as they entered to the southern part of the city through the final gate, Quelbrudlum was like, wait, there's a lot of not so cool people around here. I'm going to fashion a mithril box around my coin purse. That way it protects it. By that point, the party had already been pickpocketed at least once. I made the decision as a dungeon master, since I was going to play through some parts of this city for this particular chapter, that I want the players to start thinking more like the players. They do a really good job in combat of assessing how they want to move, how they want to react, how they want to attack, what actions they take when they become support, when they become a tank, when they might fall back and retreat a little bit, and regroup. They do a really good job in combat, but in order to really suss out and feel out these characters, I need them to start thinking like these characters in most situations. Gidgewitch, who's in chat right now, did an excellent job with that by picking up on the fact that they were entering an area where the guards were on the other side of the wall to keep the unsavory types out of Upper City. And he quickly, conjuration wizards, fuck my life as a DM again. But anyway, I actually enjoy it. But it's, he goes, bam, let's do this mithril box. But they'd already been pickpocketed once. Truth be told, there were 6 attempts to pickpocket the 5 members of the party. So far, they found out about one of them that was successful. There were a few that were unsuccessful, but nobody's really been checking their coin. Nobody's had a need to, but that doesn't mean they shouldn't. So we'll see how that plays out as things go on. If they watch this, or if they, 2 of the players right now are watching, so one of them knows that he's good. The other one, I believe, checked his coin, and I think that he saw that he was okay. He was pretty light on coin anyway, but the other ones just kind of moseyed through. But they found their other contact, who sent them to the same location. Now, I kind of want to explain something about how this is working. What I have to work with for all of Baldur's Gate is from right here until right here. So where my fingers are, that's it. That's all I have. They have a couple of contacts in the book, a couple of names. They don't tell them where. They don't tell the DM anything. And I wanted to make it to where I could kind of tell a little bit better of a story to tie in and to get some more knowledge to the players. So what I did was I turned it into I need you to go talk to this person, to go talk to this person, to go talk to this person quest. And I know those are the quest chains that annoy the crap out of RPG players. I get it. I absolutely get it. It's almost as bad as a, hey, can you go on this epic journey to go get me the bowl that's right outside of my door? But what I am doing is I'm establishing the fact that these two factions have been working together through an underbelly group of resistance and spy network that, some of that story is starting to come out, that they've been keeping tabs on not just the Dragon Cult, but all the things that are kind of going on. Factions typically don't work together in Dungeons and Dragons. Not that I've seen a lot of evidence of. There's a few moments in time where they do work together, where they come together for a greater good, but that is not the case here yet. But I'm establishing a working relationship with these two. It also gave me an opportunity to see how people would react to a different kind of couple that was two females that were married in Baldur's Gate that ran a shop. And one of the players finally picked up on the name of the shop and realized that this is basically like Goodwill, and had a lot of fun and a lot of luck with their rolls as to the things they got. They made some pretty awesome and epic purchases, which we dealt with after the game, and I emailed the player, and then they made it back to rest. So they made it about 3/4 of the way through. So some of the things that I noticed as a DM, when we got into combat, players did awesome. They did great. They always do. It is fun to have combat with these players at this table. It doesn't matter the dice rolls. It doesn't matter if somebody trips and falls. It is epically amazing to watch this group coordinate in a fight. I am ever present and ever watchful for things like metagaming. It doesn't happen because the players stick true to their own characters and they address the targets in a way that makes sense. They're not, running across the map to go help a friend that's around a corner and down a flight of stairs in another room that they had no idea was getting ready to fall. That doesn't happen with this group. What happens instead is they work through methodically. If somebody is going down, they might see that person go down, and then they fight like hell to get to them. They don't try to circumvent everything to take care of it. They do what they need to get there. So the combat portion was fantastic. I really am wanting more combat for this group because I think that's where we have a ton of fun, and chat does too. But what they could have done better, and I understand the motivation of a lot of the players. Don't understand it so much for one of them, but I'm working on figuring that out. I'm not asking them questions. I'm letting them tell me through story why their players are doing the things that they are, because then it forces me as the DM to think more like a narrator. But what they could have done differently is maybe more tactfully approached not only the interest of Baldur's Gate, but their way through Baldur's Gate. There should have been a lot more thought about personal safety. There was a lot of conversation about it, but no real actions were taken. There were moments where a party member would purposefully get separated, and a party member would go with that person, and the other ones would just hang out. And that kind of worried me a little bit. Thankfully, these were okay situations, but there's not going to be situations that are okay in the future that this is going to happen. That a player is going to get pulled aside and taken somewhere, and they're going to try to kill them. Starting to spark that fear. And I think that, to regress a little bit, or maybe progress a little bit, one of the things that Horde the Dragon Queen is really good about is it's very subtle in forcing players to think like players. Chapter 1 and chapter 2, there's no friggin' traps anywhere. There's nothing for them to worry about. Then they get to chapter 3, and there's 6 friggin' traps in the dragon hatchery, and a couple of them are deadly for a level 3 character. It's a couple of them do a heck of a lot of damage, but all of a sudden, out of the middle of nowhere, here comes a whole bunch of traps. There's a single sentence that mentions pickpocketing in the campaign guide. So there's now intrigue of socialization and how society works and how larger cities react differently than smaller cities and how you can get away with more. They haven't really encroached upon any of the laws yet. They are only given a few. But I think they could have been more mindful of the idea that they were in a city of between 140 and 190,000 people, where trade and commerce flow just as much as illicit items. They started a line of questioning that would have led to more information about about like the underground market, about the black trade, that they stopped the questioning short because I think they felt they were satisfied with what they had already learned. But there's a lot going on in Baldur's Gate, existential to what is going on for Horde of the Dragon Queen, that may or may not come back later. So having some foresight and knowledge may become helpful. Not having it may become a problem. But then again, I was railroading them through, so that's kind of on me as a DM. They could have spent a little bit more time trying to figure out why the Harpers and the Fist people, the Order of the Gauntlet, are working together. But that, I think, will come out in time. There'll be other factions that may be getting roped in. There was a little bit of back and forth at the table about the fact that one of the members is now essentially initiate for the Order of the Gauntlet, which isn't a game changer for the story. In fact, it kind of drives it a little bit further. And there is also another player who has expressed interest in joining the Harpers. So that's going to make things interesting. And I think that there's going to be a chance for a lot more conversation at the table and away from the table about that. But I think for how the night went, it went about as well as it could have. So let me talk about some of the things that I could have done different as the DM. My beloved bride, my wife, literally came up to me after the night was over, or maybe it was right before the game began, and she had known that I absolutely hate the fact that this chapter even exists. It's so much stuff. And she goes, well, why didn't you just narrate it? Why didn't you just do like a narration sequence to get them through it all and then pick up on the other side? And I think she told me right before, and literally I had like 2 hours before game was going to start. And I'm good, but I'm not that good. And that is something I should have thought about, and I didn't. I wish I would have thought about that, because then episode 9 would have been narration heavy, but we would have gone through chapters 4, gotten into chapter 5, and gotten a lot of information out there on the table, and we would be diving in. So I might take part of that as some advice for episode 10. So you might see a little bit more narration in episode 10. I'm kind of leafing through and figuring, what do I want to say if I were to do it? How do I want to do it? Because unfortunately, what they're getting ready to do does have a high probability of encounters. I think there's something like 23 random encounters that they could have, because the trip and the journey that they're getting ready to go on is supposed to take like 2.5 months of in-game time. So there's a high probability of encounters. So I'm going to be doing some heavy thinking this evening and tomorrow to figure out how do I want to work through that. I could have railroaded a little bit less, or I could have just narrated. I think that's the biggest thing I could have done to help the players. At the end of the night, everybody looked exhausted because a few of the players even said it, I don't even know what the heck's going on. That's completely on me. As a dungeon master, it's my job to keep the players engaged. The fact that I was trying to push them through only proved the fact that what I'd done was not well thought out. But, hopefully we learn, we grow, we move on, we do things bigger and better as we can. So that's a takeaway for me, is to try to think more about narrating the crap that I hate, that I know that the players are just going to be wanting to drink or fall asleep in real life because it's rough. But here's a problem that I have noticed with Horde of the Dragon Queen's book. And if anybody watches this on VOD or on YouTube and wants to reach out to me, or if I find the answer later on, great. I'll probably say something during a behind the screen. But we're doing episodic based, which is kind of a big thing. It's kind of a thing that a lot of DMs do. XP has its place, but episodic is one of the ways that you can keep the group together and make it a little bit more fair. There's a lot of problems that I personally have with XP based systems. Not that I wouldn't run it, and not that I wouldn't play in an XP based game. But I prefer episodic, especially for things like this. So for episode 1, the players are supposed to start at level 1. They finish chapter 1, and then they become level 2 for chapter 2. And you can kind of see where this is going. They finish chapter 2, and they become level 3 for chapter 3. We'll talk about chapters 4, where we are now, and 5, the next chapter. But the problem is that at the end of a chapter, or at the beginning of chapter 6, or at the end of chapter 5. I can't remember which. The flavor text is in there to get the players to level 6, which is great. Except for the fact that there's never once a call out for when to get the players to level 5. And I think that is part of the problem that I have with chapters 4 and most of chapters 5, is that there is so much going on of narrative value only, that there are like 20 or 30 pages in an 80-page book where the players have no shot at gaining enough experience to level. So I think, keeping my wife's idea in mind and how episode 9 went, that one of the things I'm going to do is focus more on narrating, and letting the players help me tell a story when it comes to the stuff that it may provide a little bit more plot, but that's not really the point of it all. Sometimes it's just fluff. But so far, I love chapters 1, 2, and 3. I'm looking forward to parts of chapter 5, and then from there on, this storyline is a riot. But those are the things that my players did. Those are the things that they could have done. Those are the things that I could have done, and those are the things that I've noticed so far about this book. And I'm looking forward to a good session this week, and kind of moving forward with Baldur's Gate and having some more encounters and having some more risk. There's some plot developments that we'll probably either work through or we'll narrate through, and then I have to decide when the players are going to get level 5. And it's one of those things that I needed to make sense within the story and what they've done, as well as there's things the players can do during this journey that may help me justify them getting leveled. And I'm not just talking about, finding out some new piece of information, or killing, a rock, or rock is a type of bird, not a rock, R-O-C-K, a rock, R-O-C. But, I'm also talking about personal character development. There's so little talk about downtime activities. And I think there's a lot of room for downtime activities for this particular type of story, where they're going to be on the road walking or riding a horse or riding on a cart for days upon end. They could read books. They could practice. They could, pick up a new skill and try to learn it or master it. Or they could get involved in politics in some way, shape, or form on the train. There's a lot of things that they could do to help bolster their own skills. Because as DM, I like to see the players grow, and I like to see them have fun, and I like to see them grow with their own players. And some of the ways I get to do that is by making sure really cool shit happens, be it an encounter that is specifically designed for a character, which is coming up. I've got a few side encounters that I have been designing based on how they have been playing, that are specifically designed to drive the story for particular characters, to get more for them, to give them meat behind their story. But they'll be coming up in a little bit, not this week, obviously. But that's some of the stuff that I like to do. And the more that they spend time working on their character, the more that shows me things that I can do to help that character. But I don't know how far we will get this week. I think that there's a likelihood we could make it through the second third of chapter 4, maybe a little bit further. Depends on how things go and how I can mash narrate some things. But that's kind of the behind the screen for this week. I'm not a fan of these short ones. I'm going to be finding some things to do besides just talk. I want to find some other ideas for some stuff. I've got some ideas for like making it more like a clip show, where I cut little clips of the episode and we talk about things that are happening in that moment, step by step. I've talked about doing some foretelling narration, where I look ahead in the book and show how something that they missed would have panned out. I would probably not do that for things that are still active. I would do that for things that are dead, that they cannot tie back to. Which so far there's a few things that died on the table, and there's no way for them to loop them back in. Even if I tell them, hey, you forgot about this, or you didn't do this, and you would have learned this, and if you would have learned this, it would take you to this. They can't intersect because some of the things that they have lost are things that events have now transpired to kick off other parts of the campaign that have forever changed it. I'm that kind of DM. I look at all the different veins that the story has to get the players where they need to go, and I either make things harder or easier based on the route that they wind up going. I do know that, for example, Storm King's Thunder, which is another series or another campaign, has that built in, and that's one of the things that I liked about Storm King's Thunder. But that's something I've applied to. That comes from way back. That comes from my time as a storyteller for Vampire the Masquerade back in the knee-high to a duck. I was never knee-high to a duck, folks, but the knee-high to a duck days in high school, where I was playing Vampire the Masquerade every weekend, from Friday night until Sunday morning. I would get up and go to church, and then I'd go back and play Vampire the Masquerade. I went to the training camps for Vampire the Masquerade storytelling to learn the rules and learn different ways to approach different situations and do real-time story building. I built an epic campaign that spanned, I think it was about almost a full year, including a 2-week camping trip in real life, where we literally played. We would go out for the day and stuff like that, and hang out in creeks and make food. But afternoon we would start playing, and we would play until midnight, 2 o'clock in the morning, for the entire 2-week time frame. And spoiler alert, it ended where everyone woke up and the entire fucking thing was a dream. I had some cheers and some people that were really pissed off, but it was epic. It was something I wrote from scratch. It was something I had fun with, and something I've incorporated parts of it into other stories that I've done. But it's very old school to do that, but I think that's a skill that not all DMs need, but some DMs have, and they should embrace it. I'm not saying that if you are a DM, or if you're thinking about playing D&D, or if you are thinking about DMing a game, that this is something that you need to know. It's where you read the entire storyline, you map out all the plot points, you draw a web line to show what leads to what, and you think, well, gee, if they go this route, that's the path of least resistance. Well, why is it so easy? If they fail to do these things or investigate these pathways, by nature, shouldn't it be harder? That's just a tool that I use. It's a device that I use to not only help me keep what the players are doing in the story in line with the story, but also to make sure that if there are things that they don't do, then it affects how things are going to be. I expressed a lot during the earlier portion. I mean, it's funny. This is only the 9th episode of Behind the Scene. But I expressed a lot that I'm trying to implore upon the characters that every action they are taking is leading towards a world-changing event. And I think I have found ways to make that rather more apparent in the future state of this game. I have ideas. It all depends on how the players are doing and where we're at, but depending on how this story ends might change the next campaign we go to. I believe in threading the needle pretty heavily from the past. There's also the chance that, we decide to jump ship and we jump to a different campaign completely. I've been known to do that, but that's usually at the beck and call of the players more than it is myself. But I'm also a DM that's not afraid to say, okay, cool, scrap that. We're going to move on, and we're going to jump over to Princes of the Apocalypse, starting in 2 weeks. Let's create some new characters and go from there. Or I'm going to take your characters and drop them in there. So there's a lot that can happen. I think there's going to be some permanent changes that I'm going to try to keep track of if we do in the other campaigns beyond the Horde of the Dragon Queen and Rise of Tiamat books, which I think we will. It's just a matter of what. I'm also, preparing mentally for the idea of a potentially third game per week. And the more and more I think about it, the more and more it excites me, and the more and more I wonder if I should just flip Harlequin's Requital to do Ghost of the Saltmarsh. But that's a conversation I'm probably having. I'll probably have the players if my heart continues to feel that way, because we've got a lot invested with what we are doing. Like we're getting ready to get character art, folks. Like for real, that's something that's happening. But it's one of those things that I just got to think about it, because the reason I'm so late tonight is because, family first. And my wife has a practice. She plays a flute in a band, and not like a band, but like a real band. And she practices on Tuesday nights. And so the problem with me moving this to Tuesdays is the fact that I'm usually reliant on her getting home before I can come down here and stream. And we have a 9-month-old, he's the youngest of our 4, who just really didn't want to go to sleep. So I needed to make sure my little boy was doing okay. And I got him to sleep, and that's when I was able to jump on. So adding a third game might stretch my limits a little bit. But that's something I'm still thinking about. It saves me from a lot of trying to find new players and learn things and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, I know I would actually rather stay with one adventure too. That's the other problem, Gidge, which is that I would also want to finish this. But we are talking 2 months from now. I mean, theoretically speaking, it is not impossible for you guys to finish this entire campaign by mid-May. I mean, legitimately, it's not. That's the other thing, is that if you guys are continuing to move at a really good clip, there's a couple of really slow parts, and we're in one of them now. But it is completely plausible that you guys will finish this campaign by mid-May, if not by the end of May. So that's something I've got to keep in mind as well, and that I do think about. Is it worth trying to stand up another group if I could delay the Ghosts of the Saltmarsh by a couple of weeks, and you guys can finish this campaign, and we can jump to new characters and jump a new campaign. There's a lot that's going on up here that I've got to reconcile. So, but as another DM, I know that you get that. There's a lot that you want to try to finish, you want to try to get things done, but then your heart starts getting pulled other directions. It's all sorts of crazy. But that's how life is, right? I mean, life as a DM is grand, but it is a mess sometimes. It doesn't help, that life is life. But anyway, but we're going to Waterdeep next, and we'll hang out there for at least 6 months. No, that's the cool part, is I think the Waterdeep portion of this book will go just about as fast as chapter 1. I think it's a 2-session thing. I really do. I don't think that the Waterdeep portion of this book is that long. It's something that there's a lot of politics involved. So instead of live acting it out, I plan on narrating it. But there's a likelihood that we may be able to get to Waterdeep and have an effect on your game on Wednesdays. Who knows? Maybe we'll put up a plaque somewhere and we'll find it on Wednesdays. We'll figure that out. But we've been going live now for about 40 minutes. If you guys get any questions in chat, now's a good time to ask. If not, I'm going to go ahead and start wrapping things up and getting ready. Not as fast as chapter 2 for Dragon Heist. No. No, not that fast. We're still in chapter 2, right? Pretty sure we are. But there's just, there's a lot that's going on in the book that's getting ready to kick off. I'm super stoked. Let me foretell a little bit here. I'm super stoked about a lot of the Life on the Road events. There's a litany, and this is the other thing that blows my mind, right? So I showed you guys the section that gets them to Baldur's Gate. Now, they have a list of other non-player characters for while they're on the road, right? So that starts right over here. Same page I've already showed you. Right here. Right by my finger. And it goes this full page and this part of the page are all non-player characters. These are all merchants and guards that they give stats and backgrounds for, that they're going to wind up having a chance to interact with. So it blows my mind that they say, hey, go to Baldur's Gate. oh, by the way, while you're on the road, here's 23 characters that you might want to play with your players. But I am super stoked about the random road events. I'm going to let the players roll the dice. I'm also going to have some narrative fun with the on the road events, to where it depends on the dice rolls, but I might have the players tell me how they handled a situation instead of having them act out the situation. So we'll see how that goes. That's something that I learned from the Castleback and Arcane Library stream from a couple weeks ago. This is my chance to incorporate that as something that I heard them talk about, that I want to give a shot, just to see how it goes. So I've got some differences to the scale that I'm going to use for the dice when we get to that portion of the story. But the random encounters are pretty sweet. There's some decent ones. There's some that they're fluff, they're crap. But there's quite a few that are actually really awesome that I would love to play through as a player, and it's gonna be interesting to see how the players handled it. But then there's the non-random events that need other events to happen in order to trigger to drive the storyline. So I'm gonna have to find a way to shoehorn that stuff in. But even those are kind of intriguing. But I'm looking forward to the random events. I think it's gonna give a lot of variety. I think it's gonna keep the players on their toes, because my intent will be to probably wind up doing a mass roll at the beginning of the on the road journey, and based on the rolls, I'm going to keep a chart. Based on the rolls, I'm going to say, okay, this happened on, you've been traveling now for 2 days, and this happened. So, based on the person who rolled that, let's say it's Josh. Josh, give me a D6 roll. Based on his roll, I might say, okay, cool. Tell me about the time that you guys dealt with this, or I'll say, everybody roll initiative. We're in the thick of it right now. So the downside of that is I haven't had time to prep as much as I would like. And I know that we're all getting kind of burned out from Theater of the Mind. It gets really tough really fast. So I'm going to do my best to prep for some of the encounters, some of the bigger ones that they may run into, so that we're not doing as much Theater of the Mind, especially since I finally got everything set up the way that it needs to be for at least us, minus a monitor for them to see you guys. The chat and all that fun stuff without having to look at their phones, and to also see what we are showing on screen, so that way they have an idea of how everything looks. But there's a lot that's going to come up that I'm looking forward to. I've got a little bit of prep to do. I have debated on whether or not I'm going to show campaign prep as something, and I'm leaning that I might. It all depends on things here at home. Like how the kids are doing, if my wife is practicing in the same room, things like that do delay me from being able to do some stuff, but that's part of life. So I do have some prep to do this week. I'm probably going to do a little bit tonight, and then a lot more over the next couple of days in preparation to get ready. I just haven't had the chance. Normally I'm about 2 weeks ahead. This time I'm not, but this is the prep that I have to do. That's what DMing is. But in absence of any other questions, I want to thank you guys for stopping by and hanging out. I enjoy doing the behind the scenes. It gives me a chance to kind of think through things as a DM. It gives you, the viewers, a chance, and the followers, and no subscribers yet, because we're not there, but we're getting closer. But it gives you a chance to have unfettered access to the DM. I love the fact that the players are here, at least a couple of the players are usually here. And it gives us a chance to have a conversation apart from, just here at the table or in email or over chat. This is a chance for us to talk about things that we've done and things that we could do. It's about being, critical of ourselves, myself as a dungeon master, and not so critical of the players, but just more of this is what they did and here's how it could have gone. But I enjoy having this time, and I'm going to continue to do this. It's just the timing of it is always subject to change because family. But thank you for hanging out. Thank you for letting me have this time with you. I am going to look at a raid. There's a couple of good groups that are playing right now. So we're probably going to do a raid in just a few moments. But I look forward to seeing you guys on Friday. If you want to watch me play instead of DM, I play the incredibly awesome fighter Nightbreeze over on Gidwitch's channel on Wednesdays, which is tomorrow. We are working through the Waterdeep Dragon Heist campaign at a breakneck pace, but we're having fun. Our characters are our characters are exhausting each other, and they've only known each other for 15 days in game. So I think there's a lot of good story that's coming out of our players while we're walking through Waterdeep like a bunch of knuckleheads. It's amazing. I actually love it. I look forward to it every week. But you can watch us on Wednesdays over on Gidwish channel. That's GIDGEWISH. And then we'll be back on Friday for episode 10 of Harlequin's Requital, Horde of the Dragon Queen. Probably most likely still in Baldur's Gate trying to get the heck out. So with that, thank you so much for hanging out. I'm going to go ahead and launch a raid, and we'll get you guys over to, looks like probably Legends of Avantis. So see you guys probably on Wednesday and definitely on Friday. Have a good night. Thank you so much for hanging out.